Hey everyone, what's up? As you can probably tell, we've arrived in Berlin at SILBERSALZ, and in the last video we already took some shots with their film stocks. Today we're going to their SILBERSALZ Cinelab and take a little peek behind the scenes. Our film roll has also arrived just on time, and now, let's find out how the whole process looks on their side.
As a customer, you can of course always come by, drop off your films, or pick up your negatives, as well as placing new orders. If you are nearby, it is definitely worth it, because you can also get a lab tour, so you can take a quick look and be shown around a bit. But basically you drop off your films, which you would like to have developed here. Then we really only need your name and email address, and if you have any processing requests, like push, pull, bleach bypass, and whether you want the flat or the graded scans, which both are possible with our scanning system. Here at our front rinse, the films of our customers arrive. Then we have this machine here, which we use to extract the liters of the films we receive, so that every film has its liter ready. Afterwards, we prepare the rolls for the next process by cutting off a bit of the liter so they are straight, and it's easier to splice them together later. Then they are basically ready to move on to the tinkering, as we call the next step. This means the customer's order is entered into the system, and the films are prepared for development. Unfortunately, sometimes we also receive films that we can't develop, for example, black and white films. There's a list on our website where we have listed which film stocks we support. If we receive something that we cannot develop, it will be stored and an email will be sent to the customer, informing them that they can request their films to be returned. The film is now virtually ready from unpacking and preparation. We added our bright internal leader with customer information, which is important for later so that we can see where a new order starts. This way we can easily recognize the next customer in the lab process. And then all of this, the films we have here, goes back into these cans and into a chute, which keeps all the orders in the same sequence I just fed into our system. And in this chute, everything goes into our darkroom, where the films are spliced together onto a large film reel so that we can develop them all at once.
We are in the darkroom and we are placing our films into these chutes. We currently have 10 customers here. Each customer can submit a maximum of 4 films, and then you simply place them right here. The film should not be exposed outside of its canister. From this point on, it must always be kept in the dark, otherwise you'll simply lose your negative. Therefore, you need to make sure that everything is dark so you don't accidentally turn on the light or take out your phone or something like that.
True, I didn't even think about the mobile phone.
We have 2 splices, a 16 and a 35mm. Obviously, this one is for photography. When everything is in the dark, you have a seat and put on these infrared goggles. Once you are ready, you start splicing the individual rolls to this large film roll right here, because we deal our photographic films just like we do with our cinema film. That's why everything is spliced onto one big roll. Basically, the 35mm roll goes here and the connector to the big reel goes right here. And then it's automatically spliced together, just like that. It's simply tape wrapped around it, and that holds it securely so that everything is on one continuous roll. And then you process the entire production run in this precise sequence, and then the next shoot is added, and so on, until we reach a length of approximately 600 meters. The emulsion side is always facing inwards, and once it's ready, we place it into our cleaning machine, which uses tape for the cleaning process. The machine removes all the remaining dust from the film, and at the same time, the emulsion side is flipped outwards because the developer machine needs the reel pre-processed like that. Yeah, so it doesn't scratch during the processing.
How many individual films fit on such a film reel?
On the big reel, I'll have to calculate that. So 600 meters is one big reel, and one individual 35mm film is about 1.6 meters long, so that's maybe 400 films. That's actually quite a lot. You can imagine when a lot of film comes in during a busy week, you're sitting here splicing all day.
We're going to start with our cassette here, where the film will be inserted into the machine and then coupled to the placeholder leader, which is already running within the machine. So, the machine is practically always threaded, with a placeholder running in there. From here on, it's all in the dark. When it comes out of the darkroom and then goes into an elevator cabinet here, which acts as a timing placeholder for us when we need to change to the next cassette. Because the previous film reel within it will be completely empty by that time, we need that brief window of 50 seconds to place the next cassette inside, couple it back together right here, and then restart the whole procedure from the machine's other side, and it then subsequently catches up. Just for a quick demonstration, this is how this lift cabinet looks like. This entire lower section can then fully ascend, which provides us with the necessary time to replace the cassette with the next one. This is the first section of the machine. The film enters here, still extremely light sensitive and not yet developed. That's why we have this first protective layer here, to protect the film from light once again. We develop here using the ECN2 process. This is significantly more elaborate, requiring virtually double the number of tanks compared to the consumer version. The stabilizer, which is the final tank, then ensures that the film and everything exposed on it will last as long as possible. Without this, the negative would decay relatively quickly, and thus we virtually ensure it remains for several decades, possibly even centuries, under proper storage. Each basin is individually temperature controlled by us. We either heat or cool them, depending on the ambient temperature. Every basin is agitated so that the chemistry in each basin, whether we are at the top or bottom, always has the same consistency and the same chemical strength so that we have no sedimentation. Otherwise, by utilizing all these separate tanks and multiple washing stages, we gain the capability to develop the film with far greater precision than would ever be possible with a standard C41 process. And this way, we can essentially extract the absolute maximum quality from the film. For one, the machine can largely ensure by itself that fresh chemistry is always available. On the other hand, we also do a lot of testing ourselves. So, before every single development run, testing is performed. We take a small portion of the chemical solution and then we test it to ensure that the consistency, the pH level, and the overall composition are all correct. We do this by using pre-exposed test strips that we receive directly from Kodak. Because we operate this test strip, this densitometry test, we are therefore able to call ourselves a Kodak-certified development company. This is no longer very common globally because it's a very costly and quite elaborate process. It's run right before every development, but for us, it's one of the features to ensure the highest possible processing standard. Our entire chemistry doesn't just pass through one specific area and then get completely replaced. Instead, it's in constant flux. So, chemicals are added and replaced bit by bit. The chemical solution that is within the different tanks is continuously filtered, and a small amount is consistently separated out and simultaneously replaced. What then enters the filters, we can then dispose of quite easily because it settles within them. In this manner, our chemistry in the baths always maintains the same quality level. So, we practically never start with good chemistry that then gets worse. Instead, it's completely linear, always consistent. We only use original Kodak chemistry. This has the advantage that we can be absolutely sure that the chemistry always corresponds to exactly the same quality level, because Kodak pays enormous attention to that. Furthermore, we want to be as environmentally conscious as we possibly can be, and we can only achieve this by partnering with Kodak, because we have a very clear understanding of their manufacturing processes, and that Kodak, accordingly, makes every effort to maximize environmental protection in all aspects. From this point onward, the material then moves into the drying cabinet. This particular step is an extremely crucial process, one that absolutely must be very precisely timed, both concerning its specific temperature and its overall humidity levels. Because if the film, in the end, when it's spooled up again, is a little too damp, then small spots will develop, or it might even become wavy. Because it's not just the surface of the film that gets wet, but the film fully soaks wet in the developing process. So, it also changes its width and its thickness as it travels through the machine and all the different tanks, which must even be taken into account during development, because this alters the speed throughout the entire process and has to be considered while it remains inside the machine. Furthermore, it can also stretch a little, or at the end, it can contract again. And even that must be taken into account when it passes through the individual tanks, so that we can keep the film precisely to the second within the machine. Here, we have individual slots, from which hot air comes out at the correct humidity. Here's a second lift system, which ultimately gives us the chance to have that 40-50 second buffer phase again, where we can take the reel, rewind it right here. So, here we can rewind it. Assuming the negative arrived here, we would then cut it and put it on a new reel. And this is virtually enabled by this lift system.
So, we're now here in our scanning room. SILBERSALZ is actually a film production. At heart, we're filmmakers. For 6-7 years, we've been refocusing on analog film, motion pictures, and photography. And we're standing here in front of a small project, the Apollon scanner, which we built ourselves.
You just saw the Cintel scanner. This scanner we used in the beginning to also scan our photo clients of SILBERSALZ 35. But deep down, we knew much more is possible, in terms of resolution, color depth, in terms of quality, and also in terms of speed. So we said we'd like to build something where filmmakers would be happy, but where photographers would be extremely happy. And we sat down and thought, what should such a scanner look like? First, we checked what's available on the market, and there was nothing left. So there's actually no one left who builds scanners for photography. It was a real shame. So we figured we'd just have to do it ourselves. And actually, we started just like many people who scan at home. You take a camera, you take a light source, you take film, and you're done. Well, there are many people who scan using DSLR-based systems and similar setups. And that's actually how we began, by first getting our hands on what we believed was the smartest, the very best camera sensor technology we could find. That is a Phase 1 sensor. It's from the cultural heritage sector. Such a device is also used in the Louvre to photograph the Mona Lisa and to check every 5 years if it hasn't changed or if the smile is still the same. That is a Phase 1 camera. It simply doesn't look like the cameras that you would normally recognize, but it's actually a very technical, industrial version of this sensor, which operates with a 16-bit depth, and it works at a full 14K resolution. This is a medium format sensor. We have installed it here on a motorized rail, so that it can be precisely controlled in a motorized way, and these positions can also be saved. The camera is rotatable. Motion picture and photography are sometimes aligned in reverse on the film. Therefore, we then shoot the film in a way that allows us to perfectly utilize the sensor. Then we have a photo bar here, and we're using a special macro lens, which is externally focused. This means there are very few glass elements inside, and you achieve focus by adjusting the distance between the sensor and the object. That's why this is mounted on a motorized rail, allowing you to precisely focus using this motor. We then spent a considerable amount of time discussing the light source, and unlike the Zintel, which you just saw, which uses a flash, here we opted to stop the film for each of your individual images, calmly capture it, take a clear picture, and then advance it. At rest, it means about half a second. So the film stops, it gets exposed, and then it's advanced. That's what we call stop motion. Finding the correct light source, and then measuring it accurately. That was quite a journey in itself. And after that came the entire area of film transport. You want to transport film very precisely. You want to force film into a very precise flat plane. Imagine, this is a medium format sensor, this is a macro lens. At these distances, the depth of field is razor thin. So, during Apollon's development, we sometimes had days where individual color grains on the film were sharp, and others were not.
So you really want to control the film's position in all axes, and also the rotation of the film very precisely. And then all of this essentially serves for the fast, precise, but also gentle transport. You want nothing to scratch, right? Well, you want to wind at 1,000 frames per second. But on the other hand, you want nothing to scratch, and the film to be handled very, very gently. It's also cleaned right here. This is a small cleaning unit. These are also PTRs, as they're called, particle transfer rollers, that also clean once more, which we always wash. The room, this small tent, so to speak, is also permanently filled with purified air. So you just saw it with the Zintel, and you take it all for granted. When you build it yourself, you realize how complex the whole thing actually is. So, you see, there are motors inside. Simply knowing how quickly each of these motors must rotate isn't so simple, because the film reel's diameter constantly changes, so that the transportation speed must continuously change. Essentially, we benefit from the fact that you as photographers and we as moving image creators use the same standard. There are minimal, slight differences in the perforation. In the motion picture sector, everything's a bit more rounded, etc. There are minor details, but we do have the same standard. So basically, a 35mm negative you shoot can theoretically go straight into the projector. And we take advantage of that. We like to say that we're not a photo lab, but rather a Cinelab. When 200 customers have come together, each of whom has submitted 4 films to us, these films are then spliced onto long reels once a week. And this here now represents approximately 200 customers on one long reel. So we currently have about 17,000 photos right here, practically on one roll.
Just from the preview, I can already tell these are my photos, and I'm definitely very excited. And then I'd say, let's just see if the pictures turned out well at all. I photographed 2 rolls of film. Maybe you can see a difference there. And Thomas and I will just take a closer look at everything now.
Alright, so right now we are here at the Apollon scanner. This particular machine is actually a Mac computer. Over here, I've got a custom keyboard, and I've already loaded and threaded the film roll. Then, I'll just go ahead and close this cover here, and then we'll begin the focusing process. And after that, we'll scan your pictures. This is essentially the front end of the whole control. For example, here you can turn the light on and off. Here, you can control the film transport system. This is the focus adjustment area. So, by pressing a button, I can move the lens up and down and then focus. Usually, we're set to 8 perf scanning, because you're shooting 8 perf. Sometimes, for the panorama colleagues, I then press here for 14 perf. The camera then moves to a different position. You can see the live preview here on this monitor too. And then, I'm in a perfect panoramic position, and I can see that it's still sharp. So now we adjusted the position of the camera and lens. I'll just go back to normal 4 perf again. There are essentially 2 work steps the operator performs. The first is simply the scanning. Wait, I'll just rewind a bit to the beginning. So, the first thing I'll do is making sure that these are your pictures. For that, I have this little caption right here. I'll check that first, then I'll load a picture, and then I see. Aha, that's Tim. He submitted 2 films and 2 additional slots he left blank. These photographs will be stored here with us until the 19th of November. If by that date he hasn't collected or placed an order for his negatives, then we will have to destroy them in the most ruthless manner. And I understand that you're looking for full quality, meaning full resolution, and that you would also appreciate us providing a grading service. We often hear from customers, "Oh, my photos are blurry." And unfortunately, we often have to say, "Yes, they are, but these are
Caused by their camera.
Set your camera correctly. Ours is correct. I can show you how we do it." I have completely opened up the aperture here, and I can now simply take the lens and move it up and down. And I see precisely, this is practically peak sharpness. It cannot get any sharper than this. And I'm checking on the film grain. I'm not even looking at the picture, so here I can do this focusing even in between the shots, because I can never know what's going on inside your camera. I really set the focus on the grain. And so now I know the grain is sharp. I'm saving this right here as the new 4perf preset. And now I know, I am absolutely certain that this image is sharp, regardless of what was going on your side of the process. Alright, so I've now selected the very first frame of your roll. I know that it's sharp, and now I'll just take a shot. Then I'll look into this one image and recheck if it's truly sharp. I'll go into the corner here. I can see clear grain. I'll go into this corner. I see distinct grain. So every single corn of grain is visible here, so to speak. I'm happy about that, and I'll move on now. I have a foot switch here, and I can now go through your film at maximum speed. I'm also not tempted to scan slower than I should, and I really just have to make sure the image section fits. You probably have a very good camera set up here, so nothing will likely go wrong. There are clients where there's photographers, where there's extreme chaos at the start and overlaps, and I don't know what they do in their cameras sometimes, where you always have to readjust every second picture. So the image registration here is really clean, and I can just fine-tune it a bit now and then, but I'm essentially scanning these pictures into the system at a pretty nice speed. So usually I'll look at the whole image. See, there are 2 films. We're also scanning the blanks, start and finish of a roll too. These are actually trash photos, but that's important information for us, because it's the transition between the last and the upcoming roll, and at the end too. We also scan partial images for you. Sometimes you get these half-flashed images. I think sometimes that's actually quite cool, and I would even, if all of them are trash. Sometimes you'll have a client from Tokyo who sends 4 films, all of them completely black. We still scan everything, because if we tell the client that there was nothing on them, that's a whole different story. Sending the customer 140 black pictures is then a bit more definite.
But I find that cool. My lab usually only sends me the images with content on them, and I think your approach can actually help to understand. For instance, with a new camera, if only one shot is good, I wonder, what about the rest? How do they look? Is there anything on them? Where's the error? And I think as a photographer, it helps to search. Okay, what could I do differently now, or even find a mistake rather than just getting only the good pictures?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, everything here looks really well exposed. There's an image on it, and it's perfectly sharp. I then select a representative image, like this one of her, for example, and then I do a rough color correction. The aim is not to go all the way to the very end. The aim is not to make it as contrasty as you possibly can. You should really do that yourselves, but for a rough interpretation of how this film would actually look, our very own color science is applied. There are different elements and approaches. So, there's a mild film simulation applied. Different things are happening there. I find it's perhaps a little too bright. I'll go one stop down. I'm doing all this on the panel, working my way down from the top. I think this is already quite well exposed. I wouldn't go any deeper with the blacks. If you look closely, there's still detail in the shadows. Like the shirt here, for example. You could always bring it back up later if you wanted. I find the white balance already quite pleasant. We usually leave things a little bit too warm. We could try turning it a little bit cooler now. We could give that a try. Perhaps that would also be quite nice. I'll put some green in there. It's really just a matter of taste, but we usually prefer to stay a little more on the warm side. And then I could just take this setting and simply paste it onto all the images, and then I'll go through the images individually again. So now your 4K images are ready. That's immediately rendered into 14K JPEG. So during the day, it's graded, and all night long the machine is working hard to do this conversion. It really does take a while per client. As you can see, around 15 minutes.
And then will that be automatically emailed to me, right?
Actually, it's semi-automated. Someone will take a look at the finished galleries again and reviews it once more to check if they're truly your images, and if it is all complete. But then it's sent out to you. Exactly.
The final step is the separation. During this process, we cut the large lap roll back into the individual film rolls so that every customer, when they order back their negatives, effectively gets their scans back on one single roll.
When they are finished, after they've been developed, after they've been scanned, after they have been briefly stored in case something needs to be rescanned or so, then they are prepared here and then they are sent back.
Okay, and if I don't order the return, then they'll remain here for a while and at some point they'll be removed.
Exactly. There's always a date on it until when we keep it, and after that it's destroyed because customer data is on it and we can't keep it forever because eventually space runs out. It's then destroyed, and then it's unfortunately too late if it's ever needed after all.
Wow, there's a possibility that one of my films could still be in it. Yes, September 29th. I still have 2 days. My film is still here. That's so funny. I mean, how crazy is that? Yeah, friends, what an incredible coincidence that my film roll is still there. That was actually the film I shot in my first video. It will definitely be linked here as well. Be sure to check it out after this video. And of course, we saved the roll and brought it back home. First of all, a big thank you to Thomas for having us. I found it very interesting to get a peek behind the scenes, and I hope you did too. I'm now even more excited to photograph with these cinefilms in the future. And I'm sure this wasn't the last time I used SILBERSALZ. Here you can see again. From such a large roll, the consumer SILBERSALZ is created, so to speak, for your cameras at home. I was told it's 122 meters, which is roughly 90 film rolls equivalent. Then these 4 different film stocks are produced: 50 ISO, 200, 250, and 500. If you enjoy this content, then please don't forget to subscribe, give the video a like, or activate the notification bell, and that way you'll always stay up to date. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and thanks for watching.